102.7 Adrian, Missouri. WRAZ Radio, 102.7 Adrian, Missouri.
Hey, I'm here. Sort of, more or less. Need to take care of some housekeeping here, don't I? There we go. How y'all doing? What do you think? You ready to be bored out of your mind? Little Christmas lights, brief festivity here. Listen to the weatherman. He said some dirty words. Let's see if I can. I'm doing my own production. So being your own producer and running some of this stuff while you're trying to talk to people can be interesting. There we go. That's the dirty word, he said. He didn't think it was going to amount to much, but if it snows later this week, it ain't going to melt. It's going to be whatever we get, we're going to have. It's going to stay with us probably until the first of the year. So, are you all ready? You ready for Christmas? I'm not, but that's another story. So, what I said I was going to do tonight, I was going to talk about how I became involved with our intelligence community. I actually spent a little time with them. It's been a long time ago. I think it's been 50 years. So probably what I'm going to say here isn't going to matter to them. I don't think they're going to care. So it just be between us, just you and me. Got a couple of people here. Do, make a comment, say hello. Let me know you're here. Show me who's watching, who's talking, who am I talking to? Just a quick comment, say hi. My involvement with, actually it was with NSA. And that started in 1968. Actually, around April of 68. I enlisted in the Army. Went for a special group, Army Security Agency. To be in that group and actually do anything, you could be in the group with a secret clearance. You couldn't do diddly. Maybe sit in an office somewhere. But to actually work in the group, you had to have a top secret or better clearance. And what they do is they ask you for some references. You give them 3 references. FBI shows up, scares the crap out of your neighbors, and they don't ask them really much, if anything. They ask them for 3 references, because if you gave those references, you can't count on those people. They had them give 3 references. Well, growing up in the country in a small community, they were going to have trouble finding enough people. But pretty much everybody knew me. Nobody apparently said anything bad about me. And I got my clearance. I had a top secret clearance to start with. From there, I went to the boys club down at Fort Leonard Wood. Spent 8 weeks there. Left in worse shape than when I got there. From there, I went to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. I think that's a security prison now, but back then it was a big training area for the National Security Agency's Army's ASA, Army Security Agency. The Army thought they owned us. NSA thought they owned us. DOD thought they owned us. Anytime it came down to anything important, NSA won. That was just it. I spent several months at Fort Devens. Took a few weeks of training in Morse code. Did not want to do Morse code. That's got to be a horrible, horrible MOS to be in, where you do nothing but sit with earphones on and take Morse code. I wanted to be what was called an 05K20. At that time, I think it was non-Morse intercept is what they called it. Then it was teletype intercept, and essentially that's what I started out doing. Was when I got sent out to Shemya, Alaska. At that time, it was an Air Force base. I was Army. We had our own little group, and we ran some monstrous machines for the time to intercept teletype communications in Russia. Later, they switched it back to non-Morse intercept. And I think now ASA has been disbanded and they were absorbed by military intelligence. But again, they're just called intercept operators. After I spent my year on the island, I got sent to Fort Meade, the National Security Agency. You have to be re-cleared. They have to make sure you haven't done anything stupid in the last couple of years to lose your clearance. So, for 2 weeks, they put me in this warehouse filing magnetic tapes. You're wondering what I'm talking about? Think about the old reel-to-reel tape recorders, tape players, the 8-inch tapes. Now, I filed these according to numbers on the boxes and on the tapes. There was no tape player, no tape recorder, nothing in there that could possibly read those. While I was doing this, the FBI was re-clearing me, and they kind of put a rush on it, so it only took 2 weeks. And the colonel come in, and he said, well, we screwed up. And it's like, okay, how does your screw up affect me? He said, we shouldn't have put you here. We don't know what's on those tapes. And I said, well, I don't either because I have no way to read them. He said, doesn't matter. We have to get you cleared for anything that might have been on those tapes. And I said, how long is that going to take? He said, oh, no, we figured it out right after we stuck you in here. So we just left you here. You got a clearance. And I said, okay. And he said, it's unusual for somebody your rank to have this clearance. And I said, really? And he says, the only other enlisted man with this clearance is a sergeant major who's a personal aide to Admiral Zumwalt, the director of the NSA. I had the same clearance that the director of NSA had. They called it an admino clearance. And I had to go over to the NSA, get a new badge issued, hung around your neck. It was aluminum, had your picture on it. It was laminated aluminum. Inside there was a piece of microfiche that had everything about you on you. Fingerprints, scars, everything. Anything about me they knew was on that microfiche. Okay. So you get over there, and I'm going to tell you that green badge meant top secret. That's all it meant. There were a few people in there that only had secret clearance, but they didn't do anything. They were file clerks or something like that. That top secret clearance was the lowest you could have and be in the building and do any work. Now, they called it compartmented projects. It fell under the need to know stuff. So your badge hung around your neck, and then another chain under your badge hung these little white laminated things that had code words on them and department names. Most people had 2, maybe 3 of those hanging around their neck. And the rule was they had to all be on display. If you ended up having to go someplace besides your department, you had to buzz a buzzer, somebody come look to the peephole, and you had to show them that little piece of white plastic to get in the door. It said you had a need to know to be in that department. Like I said, most people had 2, 3 of those maybe hanging below their badge. The rule said you had to carry them on display at all times. I couldn't, because I was cleared for every department in the building, which meant I gathered all these up and put them in my shirt pocket and my badge on display. I had some Navy lieutenant, same rank as Army captain, stop me one day and he says, "Those are supposed to be on display. Get them out of your pocket and show them." Pulled those things out of my pocket and just let go of it. They drug the floor. There was close to 5 feet of those 1-inch little cards. He stood there and just looked at me and he says, "What clearance do you have?" And I said, "Top secret." He says, "No." I said, "I have an admino clearance, and that's all you need to know." He was smart enough to know that that's the same clearance that the director and his staff had. He says, "I didn't realize you were on staff." "I'm not on staff. I'm a peon with a high clearance." What that high clearance got you was any of the dirty little crap details that some officer didn't want to perform. I did escort duty for ambassadors. The British ambassador was a pretty cool guy back then. His chauffeur was even cooler. He drove one of the old Rolls Royces with the open front. And I would go out, meet him, bring him through the gate, sign him in, take him to the director's office. Then I would go back. No cell phones then. I would go back out to the Rolls Royce and sit with the chauffeur in the back of the Rolls Royce where there was a wet bar and a television. Kind of unusual back then. And wait for the car phone to ring and say, "Come back and get the ambassador." I got sent down to Bethesda Naval because some admiral was having his tonsils taken out, and somebody with a clearance that it was at least as high as his or higher had to sit there while he was coming out from under anesthesia to make sure he didn't say anything classified. Boy, if you don't take a book with you, that's not a great duty. You're sitting there bored waiting for this old fart to wake up. You had to stay there until he was fully awake and functional. Then you were done. They didn't even want you there anymore, so you leave. During my time there, because of that clearance, I saw some things that most people at my pay grade never saw. And everything you're hearing them accusing NSA and CIA and FBI of doing now, we were doing it 50 years ago. It just wasn't as blatant and it wasn't as open and talked about. That clearance also got me loaned out. I got loaned out to CID. One day I went in, they told me what was going on. I went down, I got a new ID. I lost some stripes on that new ID. Got a new ID. I was in fatigue, so we had collar pins. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. I traded in my E5 collar pins for E3 collar pins. It's quite a step down from an NCO to a private first class. And they put me in a transit barracks. Somebody was dealing marijuana. I had a week to hang out there, hang out in the day room, play pool. That's it. Play cards, play pool, watch around, try to catch somebody selling drugs. These were all enlisted guys. I had a week, didn't catch anything. About a month later, got another call, went to the ID section. I got a new ID. I'm a lieutenant now. We're in fatigue, so just take off the E5 pins, put on the lieutenant's bars. Went to bachelor officers' quarters, same deal. My story was I was waiting for orders. So I hung out in the day room, again, shooting pool, playing cards. I didn't play my cards right. Turns out, camera's acting up. Turns out, the enlisted men were a lot smarter. Some lieutenants started selling marijuana right there on the pool table. I went and made a phone call. They showed up. And that was over. They busted him. He got to get out of the Army. So, but people used to ask me what I did there. Well, I did a lot of things. My main job, when asked, my main job was I was in control of 128 lighted buttons. I could tell you I had 128 lighted buttons. I couldn't tell you what those buttons did or what they were for. But that clearance turned out to be a curse and a blessing. I got to do a lot of different jobs. I was all over the place. Technically, I was on call 24/7. I had a civilian boss. And he came up to me one day and said, "Hey, I need you to work Saturday." Now, we'd never worked a Saturday. He said, "I need you to work Saturday." And I said, "I can't. I'm on duty roster this weekend. I'm supposed to be in a parade on Saturday." That would have been interesting because I hadn't marched in formation for over 2 years. I'm sure that would have been interesting. I could have stepped on somebody's feet. And he says, "No, you're not." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Okay." He says, "I'll get back to you." Well, he made a phone call. And the next time I had to go over to the order room, first sergeant come out and he says, "What the hell do you do over there?" I said, "Sarge, you know you can't ask me that." He said, "Everything's classified over there and you don't have a need to know." He says, I was informed that you were mission critical. You were on to call 24/7, 365, and I could not put you on any duty rosters. I said, well, who told you that? He told me, and I said, well, that's my boss. He ought to know. I think in 2 years there, I pulled Saturday duty maybe 3 times, maybe. And if I pulled a Saturday, he always gave me like Monday off or something like that. I didn't answer to the Army. Once I was there and checked in, I didn't answer the Army. I answered to my civilian bosses. And I did pretty much what they said. Actually, that was pretty good duty. If I just stayed in, I got a stripe as soon as I re-enlisted. But I had also offered warrant officer school, and I turned that down. But I can tell you, we were not only monitoring Morse code communication. Morse code may be old and antiquated, but it's reliable. We monitored teletype communication, phone, Russian television. And I'm going to say this, everything we monitored that Russia and China was doing, we monitored in the U.S. Our group motto was, in God we trust, all others we monitor. And they weren't kidding. They meant everybody. Now, people are getting all pissed off about that going on in the government now. It ain't nothing new. It's just more out in the open. They're more blatant about it. Well, I've babbled a little longer than I thought. And there's some things I'd like to tell you that I can't. Most things declassify after 20 years. Some things never declassify. I did not make a trip to Panama. I was part of a reaction force. We got on a plane. Usually we jumped in a bus. I think, what do they call it now? It was Andrews Air Force Base. So now it's Andrews Joint something now. We'd get a call, grab a go bag, jump on a bus, go to Andrews, get out of the bus, run up a ramp on the back of a B-52 or a C-130, strap in the seats, and the old flight sergeant would come out and he said, all right, this was an exercise. Y'all go back now. Middle of winter, colder than hell outside. We get that call, grab our bags, jump on the bus, go down, run up, strap into the plane. Damn tail end starts closing. This wasn't a drill. We took off. The old flight sergeant come back, said, where the hell are we going? He said, can't tell you. I know we were in the air for a hell of a long time. I know we refueled in the air. Finally landed. Back into the plane opened up. Now remember, we're all in winter clothes, winter uniforms, because it was cold in Maryland, cold in D.C. Flight sergeant come back and he says, all right, whatever we came here for is over. We're going back. You guys cannot get off the plane. You cannot go over to that fence over there and you can't have a smoke. Everybody, Hayden's watching. He'll know what that means. If they tell you something like that, that means I'm going to go back up front and not watch. So if you guys get off, go over to the fence, have a cigarette while we're refueling and stuff. It didn't happen. All we knew, it was hot. And the little ways beyond that clear cut around the base from the fence, probably a couple 100 yards, 500 yards maybe, It was jungle. And we're standing over there, not smoking a cigarette, not outside the plane. Air Force security police come by on patrol, and I said, "Hey, where the hell are we? Don't you guys know where you are?" No, no clue. He said, "You're in Panama." And that's all he could say. He kept on going. Well, we got back on the plane. The rule is, if you don't put boots on the ground, you're not there. So since we didn't get off the plane and didn't go over by that fence and stand around, we were never there. Got back on the plane, flew forever again, landed back in Maryland. Bus took us back. By then, our day was over. We went home. We didn't go anywhere. We never left Maryland. There were no records, none. There were a couple of times things like that happened. That's the one I can tell you about. If you are flown someplace and you don't set foot on the ground, you were never officially at that place. All right. I've babbled long enough. I said I would tell you as much as I could about my involvement in the intelligence community. My thing is, don't get your panties in such a wad on stuff you're hearing about what's going on. It ain't new. It's been happening for at least 50 years. I know of 50 years. And you can bet it was happening before that. Okay. We've had a handful of people here while I was babbling. If you got a question, type it out there. You want to know something, type it out. I'll give you fair warning. I'm looking for a local volunteer. So right now I'm asking for volunteers to come and say, pick me, pick me. Nobody's done that. So I'm going to start actually actively asking people in a couple of weeks. I'd like somebody that's got their pulse on the community here, Adrian, Bates County, Butler, to do a 1 or 2 5-10 minute news blurbs for local happenings. We can pre-record it, play it back. I'll put it on here and I'll put it on the radio station. By the way, I did not pipe this into the radio station tonight. This is just here. So maybe tomorrow I'll play it back through the radio station. I don't know. But I'm going to be looking for somebody to do that. Somebody that's familiar with school activities and Chamber of Commerce activities, Lions Club activities, things like that. I'd like to find somebody that's willing to do that. And like I said, record me a 5 to 10 minute blurb once a week, twice a week. We'll play it on here. We'll play it on the radio station. Community news. What new business is open? What new business is closed? What's the Chamber doing? What's the Oaks doing? What's the Lions Club doing? What's the Optimus Club doing? What's the VFW Club? What's the Bates County Antique Tractor Group doing? Things like that. Those are all local and important things. What's the Oaks and Butler doing? Stuff like that. So I'll be looking for a volunteer. So if I contact you one day and say, hey, you want to do this? Don't be surprised. I've got a few people in mind. All right, folks. That's more time than I planned on spending on this tonight. Give you a little bit of insight. Hi, Polly. How you doing, kid? I guess you're not a kid anymore. You got old on me all of a sudden there. You guys have had some really awful weather. It's definitely worse than it ever was while we were out here. Polly's in Arizona City. All right, folks. If you came in late, you want to know what was said, Go back and watch it from the beginning. It's available here. It's available over on YouTube. And if the mood strikes right, I'll play it on the radio station. I'll announce that if I'm going to do that. I want y'all to take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'll be back next week, Wednesday, same time, same place. We'll see you then. Until then, stay healthy. Stay healthy.